I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Mark Carpenter.
A lot of times people will say to me, well, I don't have a good story to tell. Nothing really happens in my life that would be a good story to teach, lead, sell, and inspire. And I say, how much are you looking for those? And they're sometimes going to fall into our laps, but we also need to be intentional about going out and looking for and asking for those examples, those stories that teach, lead, and inspire. And then it's a matter of not just telling the whole experience, but crafting it intentionally in a way that leads to the point that you're trying to make.
Mark Carpenter is a serial storyteller. Even as a child, he loved to tell stories, mainly to get attention. He leveraged that ability into a career in marketing communications and public relations, then as a college professor and corporate facilitator. Now he teaches people how to more intentionally tell stories that teach, lead, sell, and inspire to accomplish business and personal goals. He is the co-author of the best-selling book, Master Storytelling: How to Turn Your Experiences into Stories That Teach, Lead, and Inspire, and co-creator of the Master Storytelling Workshop. My interview with Mark Carpenter is coming right up. But first,
search engine optimization can be confusing, but your business can benefit from it regardless of what you do. SEMrush, an all-in-one digital marketing suite, can cover key SEO activities, including tracking your competitors' keyword strategies, improving search rankings, and much more. Why choose multiple solutions when you can use just one? Start your free trial today and get on top. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. Hey, it's Jason Falls of the Marketing Podcast Network. You know we're trying to bring you the greatest education opportunities out there. We've got another one for you, folks. The Creator Economy Expo, CEX 2023, is for content creators and entrepreneurs interested in building and growing their content-first businesses without relying on social platforms. This year's Creator Economy Expo features 10 amazing keynote speakers and over 30 in-depth breakout sessions. Join 500-plus bloggers, podcasters, authors, newsletter writers, speakers, coaches, and consultants and freelancers at the learning and networking event for content creators. Don't be left out. Plan to attend this year, May 1st through the 3rd, 2023 in Cleveland, Ohio. Register now and get early bird pricing, and the Marketing Podcast Network has a special offer for you. You can get $100 off using the coupon code MPN100. That's MPN100. Head over to cex.events to register. cex.events, code MPN 100.
Mark Carpenter, welcome to On Brand.
Thank you, Nick. It's wonderful to be here with you.
I am excited to chat with you because story is kind of the epicenter of your work, whether that is teaching, leading, and inspiring. But I have to put the caveat out there that I feel as someone that is in the story trenches myself. I feel like story's gotten real buzzwordy over the past few years, and I feel like it's easy to get overwhelmed by kind of story fluff. So how do you sort out all of the story chatter out there to what's important for people to understand about this very important work?
I totally agree with you, Nick, that it has become somewhat buzzwordy to talk about tell your story. What's your brand story? What's your company story? What's your founder story? There's all this story push out there. And as you read in the bio, one of my directions or my purposes is to get more intentional about why we tell stories. So it's not just telling a story to tell a story. You also mentioned in my bio that I've told stories since I was a kid. Well, my purpose for a kid was to get attention, but not necessarily in the best possible ways. And so it was more like just to entertain, to get attention. And so with Master Storytelling, we're really trying to focus people on taking real experiences. And particularly, I'll go to your audience when you're talking about brand, real experiences that can demonstrate what your brand is. We sometimes say, well, let's tell this fable or let's tell this future story. And I think there's some places for some of that. But what are the real life experiences and behaviors you see that demonstrate what your brand is? I was working a few months ago with a group of people who were all in human resources functions. And I started out by saying, turn to the person next to you and describe how you would answer the question, what's it like to work for your company? Because I was trying to get them to, what is really the brand of your company that you want to portray to other people? And what do you think they share? I'm going to bring you in on this with me, on this story with me, Nick. What do you think they shared with each other?
Uh, Bits and pieces of things that they see on posters around the office.
There you go. There you go. So it was products, it was services, sometimes it was mission statement or things like that. And I flat out asked him, I said, how many of you shared an experience you've had in the company that really demonstrates what it's like to work there? And I think one or two people out of about 50 raised their hands. And that's what I'm trying to get to, because people are not going to remember the words on the wall. They're going to remember the behaviors in the hall. And that's the kind of stories that I want to tell, is what's really happening that shows who you are as an organization and how you connect to your various publics.
That's, so important too, because I feel like I think it was in Kendra Hall's book, Stories That Stick, that was about the idea of culture being a collection, or should be, has the potential to be a collection of these shared stories that connect us. But in the absence of it, yeah, it's the posters, it's the products, it's the surface level stuff. But so much of that good culture that is also not something easy to check off of a box, just like brand, which is why we talk about it a lot here on the show, is rooted in stories. So how do what's the follow up then, Mark, to the kind of fragmented answer of just posters and products? What can you do to change that?
Well, part of it is starting with, what do those posters and signs and words really mean? What are the behaviors that are behind that? I'm working with a company right now on some culture training, and one of the things that we're getting to, they're launching a new mission, vision, and values, and it's great. Great. Okay, so what are the behaviors that demonstrate these words? And sometimes we don't look for those, or maybe we're even not clear on those as leadership. But by getting clear on what are those behaviors, what are some of the things that are happening within the company right now that are demonstrating that value, or that are demonstrating that commission to this mission, or commitment to this mission, and share those stories so that people go, oh, now I know what that means, instead of, well, okay, I'm left to interpret what that means. In fact, one of the things that I love, and I'm getting ahead of us here on our conversation, but I know at the end the question that you're going to ask about, what's the brand that's made you smile recently? As I've listened to your podcast,
good guest homework there.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the interesting thing that just jumped out at me as I was listening to some of your episodes. When you ask that question, and people share the brands that make them smile, what do they share right after that?
You mean the story of what happened? Yeah, it usually, you and I in the story work, we trade in prompts. It's ultimately a prompt. It's not just Nike done.
Yeah.
where's the link where people can find more about your work?
Yeah. And so anytime you have a strong connection to a brand, it's likely because there's some story behind that created that connection. So are we intentional when we talk about our brand, either internally or externally, in identifying what are those stories that we need to tell that demonstrate what our brand really means? And internally, it's really important because you want to perpetuate those kinds of behaviors so that your publics are seeing the kind of behaviors that demonstrate who you are as a brand.
Yeah. And what is the best way to? I paused because I felt like my unedited version of the question sounded a bit like a rube from Iowa, which would be to say, how do you do that? But how can it, the polished version of it is, how do we cultivate those types of stories around our brand? And back to your word, from the bio, from your work, more intentionally. How do we more intentionally cultivate those?
I think the first step is just asking for it. It's asking the people around the company. You can't be everywhere. I mean, whatever your role is the brand ambassador is not necessarily your title, but we're all going to be brand ambassadors. As a brand ambassador, do we ask people, what are you seeing people do that demonstrates this value or demonstrates this commitment in our brand or what we're trying to convey to other people? As you ask, people will come up with examples. They'll see it. Or if they don't have an example, tell them to go look for them. A lot of times people will say to me, well, I don't have a good story to tell. Nothing really happens in my life that would be a good story to teach, lead, sell, and inspire. And I say, how much are you looking for those? And they're sometimes going to fall into our laps, but we also need to be intentional about going out and looking for and asking for those examples, those stories that teach, lead, and inspire. And then it's a matter of not just telling the whole experience, but crafting it intentionally in a way that leads to the point that you're trying to make. What is the value that I'm trying to convey here? What is the point of our brand that I'm trying to get across? That will help you edit your experience into a story that leads to the point that you're trying to make. And so that was a long-winded way of saying there's two parts to your answer. One, look for the experiences. Two, be intentional about your purpose in telling that story or that experience as a story so that it makes the point that you want to make. And so you're going to craft that very intentionally.
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of woven a web of some of the most critical things, but boy, are they hard things. We're talking about brand, culture, experience. These are not buying more Facebook ads.
Yeah.
So
well, the other thing is because it's not. It's also not about you related it to Facebook ads. If I'm going to purchase a Facebook ad, I know I'm going to put X money in and I'm going to expect X money in return for that. Building brand is not like a slot machine. It's not like I'm going to put some money in and I'm going to push the button and I hope I get something out of it. It's a long-term play. It's building a house. It's decorating that house. It's a long-term strategy, not just a one and done. And I'm going to tell this one story and then everybody's going to understand what our brand means and they're going to connect to it. You have to refine that over time. And again, I keep using that word intentional, but that's really a key thing for me is it's being intentional over time about telling those stories in a way that builds that brand that you want to build over time.
Yeah. And, again, the intentionality and the overtime of it all. Is there some sort of, as we look to kind of ground that intentionality and, if folks are listening and thinking yes, and thinking about their own homework from the episode, is there some kind of anchor that we can use to ground our brand storytelling in that intentionality? Is it, I keep thinking, is there some kind of a keystone, some sort of a foundational thing to have in place when you are teaching and facilitating on this topic?
Yeah, and I hope I'm going to answer the question that you're asking here, Nick. And if I'm not, just bring me back and say, no, that's not what I was talking about. But this goes back to people who say, well, but where are we going to find these experiences that are stories that demonstrate our brand? And I tell people to look for anything that has an emotional reaction. If you can if an experience creates an emotional reaction with you or the person in your organization or the customer who's experiencing it, there is likely a really strong story there to make that point that you want to make. Stories tend to be emotional. We connect with each other through stories because we are emotional beings as humans. And so look for that emotional connection. And I'm not saying it has to be, the heavens shine down on us and we hear, angelic voices overhead, but just an emotional reaction of, wow, that touches me as to who we are, or boy, that brings me joy. I'll go back to your guests as they share the experiences that make them smile. I love the way that you frame that question. because that means they had some kind of an emotional reaction to it. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, sometimes it stumps people, and I always give them the leeway. This gets back to your some sort of emotional reaction. I always say, hey, I'm not telling you what kind of smile it can be. It could be, the smile we all think of, the warmth, the laughter. It could be the shaking my head smile, which is emotion of a different kind, but it is emotion.
Yeah. And particularly as you're trying to promote brand and culture internally, but you may have some of those stories where it's like, people did this. This is the antithesis of what we want for our brand. So let's learn from this mistake and correct that going forward, because that's not what our brand wants to represent.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
Freelancing and online marketing often looks ideal from the outside, but what's inside? Many time-consuming challenges. SEMrush offers over 50 tools and reports to assist you in every step of your routine, from competitive and keyword research to link building and technical SEO. SEMrush is your digital team member. Let's hit it off. Grab your free trial today and see measurable results. Go to bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. That's bit.ly, bit.ly/SEMrushMPN. Hey there, it's Jason with the Marketing Podcast Network. Real quick, I want to make sure you know that the world's leading B2B Marketing Expo is returning to the Los Angeles Convention Center on March 21st and 22nd. It's high time we got back together to learn, see the latest technologies and solutions, and network, right? Join thousands of marketing professionals just like you to learn from over 250 industry expert speakers, educational masterclasses, and over 300 exhibitors. And this year, your ticket also gets you into the Sales Innovation Expo and the Marketing and Advertising Expo. So it's like 3 conferences in one. It's March 21st and 22nd at the Los Angeles Convention Center. Go to b2bmarketingexpo.us to register. That's b2bmarketingexpo.us. The Marketing Podcast Network is a proud partner of the B2B Marketing Expo for 2023. We'll see you in LA.
Now, back to the show. I love this idea of looking for anything that creates the emotion. And I think, to me, like you said, stories are usually grounded in emotion. They produce emotion. It's a cyclical process. But people might be listening to that and thinking, ooh, emotion stuff that is we don't want that. We want slow and steady. I don't want people, because we go to the negative there of what we're producing. And granted, negative emotion isn't something that you want around your brand. But it's at least an input that you can hopefully address and resolve. But I do think it requires probably back to your intentionality word of being intentional with looking at and identifying those emotional experiences that surround your brand.
Yeah, and you're right, Nick. There is a level of vulnerability that comes with sharing those experiences, with opening up and saying, this is what we're doing. This is how we are. This is who we are. But it's that vulnerability that connects you with people. And I think that there's some carryover from some business strategies of decades long gone, which were, we have to show we're a serious company, we're a serious brand, our brand represents this. I started my career in banking. Now you talk about an industry that's really serious about, we want to show people we're serious. We can't be lighthearted. We're talking about their money. Right. But that's changed, I think, over the decades, because people want to work with other people and organizations that they know, trust, and like. And storytelling is one of the best ways to get to that. I'm going to give you a quick example. I was kind of thinking of sharing this as one of the brands that make me smile. But there's a nonprofit organization in the Salt Lake City area where I live. It's called The Other Side Academy. And they run a number of businesses, but all the people who run these businesses are people who have gone to the Other Side Academy as an alternative to a prison sentence. These are people who have formerly been drug addicted, multiple felony convictions, and now they're running companies like a moving company, a landscaping company, a building company, a thrift store, and they need people to trust them. And one of the things that they did, we actually hired them to move my mother-in-law a few years ago. And at the end of the move, and they were just, the people there were so polite, they were so helpful. And at the end, they said, would you mind if I share my story about how I got to where I am right now? And this young man, probably mid to late 20s, shared his experiences of growing up and getting involved in the wrong types of friends, spending time in prison, spending time fighting through a drug addiction, and then saying, because I came to the Other Side Academy, it saved my life. And I want to thank you for your contribution in turning my life around. Because by accessing our business, you are helping me and other people like me to turn our lives around. Now, if you don't think that that's a vulnerable story, then I'm not sure how human you are, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But think of the impact that story makes on people who hear that and say, yeah, I want to support that organization. I want to support you and your growth and the turnaround in your life. And so as vulnerable as that story is, that's the kind that has the powerful impact on us.
Well, and that provides a perfect kind of bridge to, you talk about these individuals and running businesses and leading. And when we look at leading with story, and especially with what you just said, the vulnerability required, and you talk about kind of some of it seems like maybe the baggage of history, of industry, of, as we climb the ladder, often the inclination is to armor up and to shield that vulnerability.
Mm.
Talk a bit about the role of storytelling and leadership.
Yeah, and you're right. You're seeing this exactly the same way that I am. That we've carried over a lot of leadership expectations, and I mean expectations of myself as a leader from past generations. That I need to be a serious leader. I need to share facts and figures and numbers. I work with sales teams a lot and talk to them about the power of storytelling in sales, and they say, "Well, I can't just not share features and benefits and prices and facts and figures." I said, "Yeah, I'm not saying that you don't share those things, but I'm saying augment those things with story." Think about the newer generations that are coming into the workforce. They have lived their life in the social media world. They have lived their life connecting with other people that way and connecting through the stories that other people share. We need, as leaders, to continue to connect with those people. No, we can't say we're not going to set any goals. We're just going to tell stories. We're not going to talk about features and benefits and products. We're just going to tell stories. But we need the story to augment those things so that we are connecting as human beings, that we're connecting as people. And you're going to be seen as a stronger leader when you can connect with your people through story than you do if you're just giving facts and figures. I had an experience a number of years ago when I was working in marketing communications, and we had a new CEO that came onto the company, and was talking with him about the first company meeting that he was going to present at, get the whole company together. This was a software company. So we're talking about the majority of the employees being computer engineers. So I just want to get you kind of and I know it's a little bit of a stereotype, but get the stereotype in mind of who we're talking to with computer engineers.
Right.
And this new leader says, yeah, I want to go through every aspect of EBITDA and present this in charts and graphs in the meeting. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the financial term, EBITDA is interest before earnings,
earnings before interest,
depreciation, and amortization. Yeah. It's all those long words, right? Which is why they refer to it as EBITDA. And I went, okay, but do something that connects that to their jobs, that shows them what that actually means to them. And he said, no, they need to get this, and they need to understand why this is important. So I'm going to present this and tell them that they need to figure this out. Now, Nick, you tell me, what do you think happened as that meeting progressed in terms of what was going on with the employee audience?
Questionable things, including two grown-ups like you and I, who got probably force-fed that and can still barely kind of cobble the acronym together,
Yeah.
and it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick with us, to be frank about it, and that's a problem. And that's what you can do with story, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly the point I was making. So you had people in that meeting who are checking out. They're not listening. They're not paying it. They're dozing off. They're on their phones playing games or texting their friend across the aisle going, "Can you believe it?" Or I don't know exactly what was going on. But yeah, story is the thing that connects. And I'm not saying that the data, the financial statistics and EBITDA are unimportant. They are. They're really important. But we need to make the connection to the people with that information. That's what leadership is today, is it's connecting people. And story will help you connect in a very powerful way.
That was a powerful soundbite right there, sir, in terms of the power of story and the role of it when it comes to leadership communication. Well, we've given a tease to the brand that has made you smile. You gave us another brand that was on your smile list, but must not have been your finalist. So I am eagerly awaiting the brand that has made you smile recently, Mark.
So Nick, you're seeing through my clever strategy. My problem was knowing that this question was coming. I had too many brands that made me smile, so I snuck one in earlier with the Other Side Academy. But I'll give you another one that's just kind of a day-to-day smile for me. It's a company called Kizik, Kizik, and they make shoes that you don't have to tie. So they're pop-in shoes that have a heel that pops down, and then you just slip right into them. And they're a company that's local here in Utah as well, is one of the reasons that I like them a lot. But I have a pair of those shoes that never goes outside. They're my inside slippers, basically. I have a pair of their dress shoes, and I have a pair of more casual shoes that I use to travel, because it's great if you ever get stuck in a situation at an airport or some security place where you have to take off your shoes. What's the worst thing? It's trying to bend over and tie your shoe. It just
Oh,
makes
yeah.
me smile to just step in and step out of those shoes. And they're just, it's just one of those simple things in life that makes me smile.
Well, it's funny because we were joking earlier about the more Facebook ads. I have actually been advertised that very shoe on social media. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to get closer to it. The other thing is I was thinking about that was in, and I have no clue. That was at least a good Facebook ad. I got one for, I don't know I don't know if it's teaching at a college of business, but for whatever reason, they've been trying to sell me a hat that says EBITDA. And I'm just like, who is that for? I mean, we were we were kind of not that it's not important, but if like that label is like something that you're gonna get a hat of, it's like I feel like that targeting, they've got something wrong if they're targeting me, but it also says something if
You
you're
can't see me clutching my face right now.
if you're an EBITDA hat wearing guy, even though now, because the phone listens to us, I'm sure I'm going to get it even more now. They think they're close to that and the Kizik shoes. So, but the one is definitely one I'm closer on.
Oh, that's great. Well, and if you've seen the Kizik ads on Facebook, then you see why it makes me smile too, because
Yeah.
their ads are very smile worthy, because that's their brand. Their brand is, let's be a little different, let's be fun.
Well, that and just the video of the thing, I of just popping your shoe in or your foot in there, and then the heel popping up. It looks amazing. Well, shoe comfort aside, which could be the offshoot of the On Brand podcast, On Shoes with Nick Westergaard and Mark Carpenter. Mark, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Well, the first place I'd send you is our website, which is master-storytelling.com. So you have to have the little dash between master and storytelling. Or look for me on LinkedIn as well. You can just look up Mark Carpenter and look for the one that has master storytelling sitting behind his image there. And you'll be able to track me down that way. We also have a master storytelling LinkedIn and Facebook pages, so you can even search that way. And that'll be a kind of a backdoor to come back to me individually if you want to connect with me personally. But I would love to connect with your audience and help them in any way to just what we've been talking about. Identify those stories that are going to be impactful for their brand. And then how do you craft those intentionally to make sure that it is demonstrating your brand in the way that you want to connect you to all the different people that you need to connect with as an organization.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes at onbrandpodcast.com. Mark, thanks for being on brand with us.
It's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed talking with you, Nick. Thank you.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.